He hadn't planned to stop. He hadn't planned to feel. Yet the second Darian Cole stepped into the small-town square of Alder Creek, his entire world slammed into him with the force of a truth he never expected to face. There, on a brick wall warmed by the afternoon sun, stood a painting that nearly brought him to his knees. Not because it was beautiful, though it was. Not because it was familiar, though it struck him straight through the heart. But because it held her, Nerissa, the woman he once vowed to love, the woman he let slip through his fingers, the woman whose absence hollowed him in ways no fortune could fill. She was captured in sweeping strokes, head lifted, eyes bright, arms wide as if welcoming something precious. Around her were 4 bursts of brilliant color, almost alive with movement, as if the wall itself breathed. He felt the ground shift beneath him. No one else painted like this. No one else painted with themselves. Heart, soul, memory, woven into every shade. His feet carried him closer before his mind caught up. His fingertips hovered inches from the wall, afraid that touching it would confirm the ache he fought for years. At the bottom was a small inscription, for new beginnings. Nerissa Vale and the light of my life, S. His throat tightened. His pulse throbbed. The words blurred. She was alive. She was here. She was creating again. But the final line is what shattered him. The light of my life. S. Plural. He turned, and the sight waiting for him nearly buckled his knees. Nerissa stood just a few yards away, hair flowing, eyes soft, face glowing, with a quiet strength she never had during their final days together. But she wasn't alone. 4 small children, 2 boys, 2 girls, ran around her in joyful circles, their laughter bright enough to punch a hole straight through his chest. He wasn't imagining it. He knew those faces. He knew that spark. He knew those eyes. Every single one held a piece of him. His heart stumbled. His breath caught. A truth he never expected slammed into him. He hadn't just lost his wife. He had lost 4 children he never even knew existed. Have you ever loved someone so deeply, but watched them slip away because your world became too loud, too fast, too full of everything, except them? Have you ever wished, years later, that you could go back, not to change the outcome, but just to be present in the moments you missed? He did. Darian had built an empire, but in the silence of his success, he never heard his marriage breaking. He'd spent years convincing himself she left because she couldn't handle the pressure. He was wrong. She left to protect the very thing he never knew she carried. Their children. 4 pieces of him. 4 lives that never knew their father. 4 hearts that had learned to live without his name. And now, here they were, laughing, alive, real. He stood there, surrounded by noise, but hollowed by the quiet between them. Because how do you approach the woman you failed, when she's holding the lives you missed? How do you ask for a second chance when you never showed up for the first? This is not just a story of love. It's about time, about presence, about redemption bought not with money, but with moments. Before we go deeper into this journey of heartbreak, healing, and a love rediscovered, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens when a man who had it all realizes what truly matters. And if you're a woman who's ever held a family together with nothing but prayer and strength, this story is for you. May peace fill your heart, strength hold your spirit, and may every seed of love you've planted bloom in due time. Let's begin. The morning she disappeared was unusually still. Not the kind of stillness that feels peaceful, but the kind that makes you pause, listen, and realize something's off. Darian Cole stood in the doorway of his high-rise loft, keys still in hand, briefcase dropped at his feet, staring into a silence that didn't belong there. No soft jazz playing from the record player, no clatter of mugs from the kitchen, no Nerissa humming to herself as she watered the succulents she rescued from street vendors. Only quiet. It was a quiet so sharp, it cut through his mind and forced him to listen, not just with his ears, but with the ache in his chest that he'd been ignoring for far too long. He walked farther in. The scent of lavender still hung in the air, the oil she dabbed on her wrists every morning. But it wasn't fresh. It lingered like a memory, like she'd been gone long enough for the scent to start fading. Her scarf was missing from the hook by the door. Her favorite shoes were no longer by the mat. The kettle wasn't warm. The framed photo of them in Lincoln Park, the one she always straightened when she passed by, was tilted. Darian moved through the space like he was walking through a dream. Nothing felt real. Everything looked untouched, and yet clearly changed. And that's when he saw it. A white envelope resting on the nightstand. No name written, just folded, placed neatly, too neatly. He froze. The last time he'd stood still like this was years ago. It had been Nerissa then, too, standing under golden trees on the day they first said I do. That day, time paused because of joy. This time it paused because everything inside him clenched in warning. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. The seal wasn't even closed. She hadn't wanted to trap it shut. She wanted him to read it, but not chase her. Darian, I waited. For your eyes to look up from your phone. For your hands to hold mine without distraction. For your voice to say, let's try again. But your world has no room for us anymore. I need to breathe, Darian. And maybe you do too. Nerissa. The words weren't angry. They weren't cold. They were soft. Final. Honest. He sat on the edge of the bed, paper still in hand, breath caught between his ribs. For a man who'd learned to negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts in his sleep, he had no words for this. No rebuttal. No counteroffer. No version of logic that could explain why he had let it get this far. He remembered the first time he saw her, really saw her. It wasn't just the way she looked that day, though everything about her stood out. It was what she carried. Nerissa Vale walked into that City Arts event like she didn't need to belong, because she already did. Surrounded by sponsors in tailored suits and polished conversations, she stood, there in a flowy green dress with flecks of dried paint on her fingers, talking about murals and meaning with a fire in her eyes. He had come out of obligation. She had come out of passion. She smiled when she spoke, wide, unapologetic, and completely unfiltered. She didn't flatter him, didn't ask what company he ran, didn't pretend to care about his title. She asked what moved him, what kept him up at night, not in worry but in wonder. No one ever asked Darian that. And maybe that's why he asked her to coffee. And then again, the next week. And again, until they weren't strangers anymore. Their love hadn't come with fireworks. It came quietly. Soft jazz in her apartment. Long walks past midnight. Her head resting on his chest while she traced invisible shapes against his skin. He used to lose track of time with her, and he never lost track of time. They married on an October afternoon, under a canopy of red and gold leaves. No grand venue, no celebrity guest list, just a handwritten vow, a violinist she'd found in a subway station, and her mother's borrowed earrings. He remembered her whispering, "All I need is this. You. And now." But now didn't last. Not because he stopped loving her, but because his attention fractured into deadlines, investors, acquisitions. Growth required sacrifice. At least that's what he told himself every time he missed dinner, every time he chose a meeting over a moment, every time she reached for his hand and found him typing an email instead. She started leaving notes. On the fridge, on his desk, in his pockets. "Let's eat dinner outside tonight. I miss your laugh. Remember the bookstore by the pier? You promised we'd go dancing again." He always meant to reply. He didn't forget her. He just delayed her. He assumed there'd be time, but time had a habit of running out when you weren't looking. He read the letter again and again, hoping it would change the second time, or the third, but it didn't. There were no accusations, no dramatic send-off, no threats, just release. The kind of release that comes when someone has fought too long for air and finally decides to stop gasping. Darian dropped the paper onto the bed and stood. Every room felt hollow now. The kitchen, where she once danced barefoot while flipping pancakes. The living room, where her half-finished paintings used to lean against the wall. Even the bathroom sink, with only his toothbrush left behind, felt like it had something to say. He searched anyway, as if she might be curled up on the balcony with her sketchpad. As if she might walk through the door with almond croissants and 2 small coffees, hers with cinnamon, his with nothing. But the silence answered every question before he could ask it. She was gone. He called her, straight to voicemail. He opened their shared calendar. Empty. He pulled up her social accounts. Gone. Every post, every photo, every trace. He tried calling her best friend. Disconnected. Her mother's number had changed. She had done it right. Left no digital trail, no email bounce back, no forwarding address. Like she had planned this for a while. And she had. He just hadn't noticed. Because to notice her pain, he would have had to look up from his phone. To hear her disappointment, he would have had to come home early, stay longer, ask how her day was instead of reporting on his own. She gave him chances, more than he deserved, and he wasted every single one. He sank into the couch, head in his hands, elbows on his knees. For the first time in years, he didn't care about the next quarter's numbers. He didn't think about the board meeting. He didn't even hear the phone buzz across the table. All he heard were the words, "I need to breathe, Darian. And maybe you do too." He thought he had more time. Time to make her smile again. Time to take her hand again. Time to try again. But time, once lost, does not return itself to the careless. Have you ever written a letter you never thought you'd have to? One that wasn't filled with anger, but with goodbye? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And if this story is already reaching into places you didn't expect, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and stay close. What comes next will change everything. The roads leading out of Chicago were still wet from dawn as Nerissa drove, with both hands tight on the wheel and a single bag in the back seat. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. The tears had already been cried, the decisions made long before her feet ever touched the gas pedal. She was leaving behind the skyline, the noise, the endless wait. She wasn't running. She was reclaiming her breath. 3 hours later, her car pulled into a gravel driveway just beyond a cluster of tall oaks. A weathered mailbox leaned to the left. The cottage was small, with ivy climbing its sides and chipped blue shutters that hadn't been painted since her grandmother passed. But it stood, and more importantly, it welcomed her without question. She sat in the driver's seat for a while, hands still, heart heavy. The silence here was different. Not the lonely kind she felt in that high-rise apartment. This silence held space. It felt like a beginning, even if she didn't know what came next. Inside, the cottage smelled like old books and lemon balm. The wood floors creaked, the windows stuck slightly, and the plumbing took convincing. But it was hers. No missed calls. No passive-aggressive check-ins. No eyes glazed over during stories she once loved telling. Just space. The first few days passed slowly. She unpacked what little she brought. She aired out the house, scrubbed the windows, opened all the curtains, let light pour in. She didn't paint at first. She sat on the back porch with her knees to her chest and watched the sky change. She walked barefoot in the grass until her feet knew the land. She found her grandmother's kettle and made peppermint tea, even though she didn't like the taste. Something about it felt familiar, safe. But then one morning, nausea struck. She didn't think much of it. She blamed it on the tea, the sudden change in schedule, the stress, but it returned the next day. And the day after, a week in, she sat at the edge of the bathtub, pregnancy test clutched between shaking hands, mouth parted in disbelief. 2 lines, clear, bold, unmistakable. Her body trembled. She didn't cry, not yet. She just stared, blinking. The floor beneath her felt uneven, like her entire center had tilted. Her first thought wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was "I wish he knew," followed quickly by "but he doesn't deserve to. Not yet." She looked down at her stomach. Flat, still, quiet, but not empty. Inside her, life had already started. And suddenly, everything she left behind felt like it belonged in the past. The clinic in Alder Creek was quiet. 2 rooms, 1 nurse, and walls painted with faded sunflowers. Nerissa sat alone, her hands pressed together tightly in her lap, waiting. The ultrasound technician entered with a gentle voice and a practiced smile. She asked a few routine questions and prepped the machine. "You may feel a little pressure," she said. Nerissa nodded, barely hearing her. Her thoughts were loud, uneven, running in every direction. And then, thump, 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 thump. The room filled with rhythm, rapid, small, persistent rhythm. The screen flickered. The technician squinted, paused. "Miss Vale, how long ago did you find out you were expecting?" 5 days ago, Nerissa whispered. The woman turned the screen toward her. "I want you to breathe, okay? You're not carrying 1 child." Nerissa blinked. "What?" The woman smiled gently. "You're carrying 4. Everything inside her went still. 4. Not 1 heartbeat. 4. The monitor displayed them, tiny, indistinct, curled into themselves like question marks. 4 separate pulses. Nerissa didn't speak. Tears slipped from her eyes before she realized they'd formed. The technician said something else about appointments, nutrition, high-risk precautions, but it was a hum in the background. All Nerissa could do was stare at the screen. At them. Her children. 4 tiny hearts. 4 reasons to stay strong. 4 pieces of the love she almost gave up on. She walked out of that clinic with her hand resting low on her belly and a fierce sense of duty blooming beneath her ribs. Later that night, with the cottage bathed in candlelight and the wind slipping through the cracked windows, she opened her journal. Journal entry, March 18th. I don't know if I'm strong enough, but I have no choice. 4 lives are depending on me now. I cried for hours, and not because I'm afraid, but because I feel them already. I don't know their faces. I haven't heard their voices, but they're mine. They're here. And somehow, that makes everything make sense. I don't miss the noise anymore. I don't miss him, not the way he was. I miss what we could have been. But maybe this is who I was meant to become all along. I think I'll name them soon. I want to speak to them by name. God give me strength, not for me, for them. Love, Mom. Weeks passed. Nerissa marked them not in calendars, but in sonograms, cravings, and heartbeats. She read parenting books borrowed from the local library, took slow walks down to the creek every morning, hummed lullabies while steeping tea. She spoke to her stomach like they were already listening. She chose their names the way she once chose colors for her murals, by instinct, by feel, by meaning. Ari, because it meant lion, and she knew he'd need courage. Soline, soft, radiant, and sure, like her grandmother's prayers. KL, strong and steady, with eyes that would see the quiet nova, a burst of light, unexpected and unforgettable. She whispered their names each night before sleep. One evening, after a long nap, she walked into the unused sunroom at the back of the cottage, the same one her grandmother once used for sewing. She stood in the center, hand resting on her belly, and let her eyes scan the bare walls. And then she began to paint. Not for an exhibit, not for a gallery. For them. With every brush stroke, she told a story. Stars, hills, the moon cradling 4 glowing orbs, a woman standing beneath them with her hands open, not lost, not broken, but held together by something larger than pain. Paint streaked her arms and cheeks. She worked barefoot, often forgetting to eat, wrapped up in the joy of creating again. It was the first time since leaving that she didn't feel like she was running from anything. She was building something now. The cottage became a sanctuary, walls filled with color, quiet nights filled with baby kicks and soft music. The pantry held jars of dried herbs. A cradle sat near the fireplace, handmade by a carpenter who never asked too many questions. At each checkup, she watched the babies grow. Ari kicked the hardest. Soline calmed the storms in her body. Kyle nestled to the side, stubborn but calm. Nova moved when the world was quiet, as if already in tune with the stillness of midnight. There were hard nights, swollen feet, and moments where she feared the loneliness would wrap too tightly. But there was joy, too. Deep, bone-level joy. The kind that doesn't scream. It hums. She no longer missed the city skyline. She no longer waited for his name to appear on her phone. She had 4 names now, and they filled every inch of her. He hadn't meant to come here. Alder Creek wasn't even on his radar until a board member insisted he personally attend a regional summit to show face and secure goodwill for the company's rural outreach initiative. He'd nodded politely, sent his assistant a clipped text, and packed an overnight bag. Small towns were all the same to him. Quiet streets, antique shops, one diner with peeling, menus, and a lot of waving from strangers who didn't know his name and didn't care to. But Alder Creek felt different the moment he stepped out of the car. The air was clean, not just in the lungs, but in the way it hit the skin. Slower, softer. The main street buzzed with a weekend art fair. Booths lined with hand-woven baskets. Pottery, face painting, musicians playing acoustic guitar beneath tree shade. He didn't belong here, not in his tailored jacket, not with his watch that cost more than some of the cars parked along the curb. But he walked anyway, unsure why he wasn't rushing back to the hotel. He passed a vendor selling honey, a group of children laughing as they chased. Bubbles, an older woman offering apple fritters from a wooden cart. His phone buzzed. He didn't check it. He felt something. He didn't know what it was, only that it had weight. like the kind of weight you feel before something shifts, before life tilts in a way you can't undo. Then he turned the corner and stopped. Completely. A crowd had gathered in front of a tall brick wall, now completely covered in paint. A mural, but this wasn't the work of a hobbyist. This wasn't random color or empty symbolism. This was intentional. This was art with a heartbeat. In it, a woman stood with her face lifted, not desperate, not pleading, but radiant. Her arms reached outward, and around her were 4 beams of color, each one different. Red like fire, blue like deep waters, gold like morning light, and violet, soft and strong. The longer he stared, the harder it became to breathe. He didn't need to see the signature. He already knew. Nerissa. He couldn't move. He was standing in the middle of a sidewalk, shoulder to shoulder with strangers. But in that moment, the world had folded in on itself, quiet and devastating. The mural wasn't a painting. It was a memory, a confession, a story she had no words left to tell him. The woman in the center, her face wasn't exact, but it didn't need to be. The way her hair curved around her shoulders, the familiar grace in the way her hand reached upward. It was Nerissa, not as she was when she left, but as she could have been, if peace had stayed a little longer. But it was the beams of color that stole his breath. Each one told its own story. Red, bold, burning, chaotic, life at full tilt. The kind of fire you either run from or learn to carry. Blue, calm, intelligent, steady, like the ocean before it speaks. Gold, bright, curious, full of movement, always reaching for more. Violet, gentle but strong, dreamy, unexpected, wild in the best way. He stared longer, eyes lingering on the placement of each beam, how they didn't orbit the woman, but instead extended from her, not around her, of her. Suddenly something inside him shifted. He stepped closer, as if gravity demanded it. At the base of the wall was a plaque. Small, wooden, hand-carved. He crouched and read, "In celebration of new beginnings, Nerissa Vale and the light of my life, S. Sponsored by Alder Creek Arts Fund." His throat locked. The light of my life, S. Plural. His heart pounded. Hard, too loud, too fast. She hadn't just disappeared to find peace. She'd been carrying something far more powerful. A sound behind him, laughter, light and bubbling, pulled his attention. He turned slowly, and what he saw struck him harder than any headline, boardroom betrayal, or failed acquisition ever could. 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, dancing in mismatched socks near a booth selling hand-painted stones. One of them, slim, eyes intense, focused on arranging his rocks by size. Another, smiling as she helped a younger girl tie her shoe with patient hands. The last, a little firecracker, spinning in circles with a paper crown on her head. Every detail sharpened, the shape of a chin, the arch of a brow, the stubborn tilt of a jawline. He felt dizzy. No one had told him. No letter, no lawyer, no announcement, because she didn't want anything from him. She just wanted a life that didn't cost her the one she was already growing. He watched the children, his children, from a distance he hadn't earned. They moved freely, without hesitation, untouched by the cold, sharp lines of the world he lived in. They didn't know him, not as a name, not as a memory, not at all. And then, she appeared. Nerissa stepped out from behind one of the booths, a woven bag over her shoulder, a cup in hand. Her hair was longer now, sun-kissed and pulled back in a low knot. She wore a loose linen dress, sandals, and that same quiet grace that first disarmed him years ago. But there was something new in her, too, an ease he hadn't seen in a long time. A lightness, not the kind that comes from pretending everything's fine, but the kind that comes from surviving. She called out softly to one of the children. The girl with the crown ran to her, arms wide. Nerissa scooped her up with a laugh, kissed the top of her head, and whispered something into her ear that made the little girl beam. He took a step forward, then stopped. He couldn't move any closer. He suddenly became aware of everything he wasn't holding, everything he hadn't seen. He hadn't been there for the wobbly first steps, the fevered nights, the drawings taped to fridge doors, the songs sung at bedtime, the names whispered in the dark. They didn't know his voice, and yet they were his. He felt the pressure build behind his eyes, but blinked it away. For once, the man who could speak his way through any negotiation had no words, He just stood there, barely breathing, watching the woman he'd once promised forever to, holding the future he never knew she'd carried. The wind shifted slightly, carrying a faint trace of lavender. She hadn't seen him yet, but even if she did, would she want to? If you were in his shoes, what would you do? Would you walk away? Would you speak? Would you try to fix what time already rewrote? Tell me in the comments. And if this story is striking something deep, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's holding a silence like this. The willow tree stood at the edge of the fairgrounds, its branches cascading, like curtains swaying gently in the late afternoon breeze. It had always been her place, a hidden corner she found years ago while visiting Alder Creek with her grandmother. As a teenager, she used to sketch here, feet in the grass, pencil in hand, letting the world go quiet. Nerissa sat there now, just as she had before. Only this time, the ache in her chest wasn't from dreams that hadn't happened, but memories that had. She heard footsteps before she saw him. She didn't turn. She knew who it was. Darian stood a few feet behind her, unsure whether he was allowed to come closer. The children were with a neighbor. He had watched them disappear down the path, tiny, backpacks bouncing, Nerissa kissing the tops of their heads like a quiet ritual. Now it was just the two of them. No walls, no staff, no rings. He cleared his throat once, softly. "Hi." She didn't answer. He waited. Finally, she spoke. Her voice wasn't cold. It wasn't warm either, just steady. "You found the mural?" "Yes." "You saw them?" He nodded. Yes." A long pause. The branches whispered above them, offering shelter, but no protection from what hung in the space between them. "They're beautiful," he added. "All four." "They're mine," she said quietly. "But yes, they're yours too." He looked down. "I didn't know." "I didn't want you to," she replied, still not turning toward him. "Not back then." "Why?" Now she turned. Her eyes were tired, not from sleep, but from carrying years of it. "Because you were already gone, Darian. Before I packed a bag, before the letter, before I ever took the test. You left long before I did." He swallowed hard, chest tightening. "I thought I was doing what was best for us." "No," she said. "You were doing what was best for the man you were trying to become." I just stopped asking where I fit into that picture. Another silence, not heavy, but sharp. Darian took a hesitant step closer, but still kept a respectful distance. "You should have told me. I should have been seen," she answered softly. Not bitter, just truth, spoken plainly. He let those words settle. He couldn't argue them. Wouldn't. Nerissa looked away, her eyes on the pond that reflected strips of orange sky. "You used to listen to me. You used to notice when I was tired, when I was trying." He closed his eyes. "I thought if I just built enough, bought enough, created enough, we'd be safe." Her jaw tightened. "Safe?" "I didn't want safe. I wanted you. I wanted pancakes on Sundays. I wanted you to kiss paint off my cheek instead of apologizing for missing dinner again." He sat down, slowly, legs crossed in the grass like they used to do on her old balcony when they were still dreaming, still choosing each other every day. "I read the letter 100 times, he said. "I wanted to hate you for leaving, but I couldn't. I knew I'd left first." She exhaled slowly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then came the memory. Nerissa stood beneath the trees, golden leaves drifting behind her, holding a vow scribbled on the back of a museum pamphlet. "I don't need a perfect life," she had whispered, voice trembling. "I just need a real one where we show up even when it's hard, one where we hold hands when we're tired, one where we say, 'I'm sorry,' before silence builds a wall between us." Darian's vow had been simpler. "I'll never stop choosing you," he'd said, brushing hair from her face. "Even when life gets loud." They kissed under an arch of autumn branches, with no audience but a violinist in the wind. Back under the willow tree, Nerissa's voice was low. Somewhere along the way, "You stopped choosing me. I know." "I begged in small ways," she said, voice catching. "In notes, in looks, in silence." "I didn't hear it," he said. "I know." She turned fully now to face him. "I'm not here to punish you. I made peace with the life I have. But I need you to understand, what broke between us didn't shatter all at once. It chipped, quietly, daily." He nodded, eyes glassy. I was afraid of telling you about the pregnancy, she added, not because I thought you'd reject me, but because I was afraid you'd try to buy it, fix it, own it, and I wanted them to grow up being seen. Darian wiped his face quickly. You were right. A long breath passed between them. Not closure, but a shift. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the trees, casting long shadows across the grass. Darian looked at Nerissa, not with the urgency of a man trying to win something back, but with the humility of someone finally understanding what he lost. I'm not here to make a speech, he said quietly. I know that won't fix anything. She nodded once, saying nothing. I just need you to know. I'm not asking for the past. I'm not asking for you to forget anything. I only want a chance to show up now. For them. However you'll let me. Nerissa studied him. He looked tired, not in the way he used to look after work, but the kind of tired that comes when someone starts feeling again, when success stops numbing you, when silence stops protecting you. Do they know? He asked, voice steady but low. Do they know about me? She hesitated. Not yet. Would you let me meet them? Her lips pressed together, not from anger, but caution. They're happy, she said. They know love. They know consistency. I won't let anything shake that. I don't want to take anything, he replied. I just want to earn my place. A pause. A long, heavy pause. Then quietly, you can come by. On Saturday. Around 2. He looked up. You're sure? No, she said. But they deserve to know where they came from, and you deserve to prove who you are now, not who you were. Something in him cracked open. Not from pain, but relief. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't lean closer. He let the space between them hold what it needed to. They sat in silence for a while. The air shifted. A few leaves drifted down around them. And in that still moment, the world didn't feel finished. It just felt honest. Saturday arrived like a held breath. Darian stood outside the cottage gate in a plain t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers that still looked too new. He held nothing in his hands. No gifts, no flowers, no distractions. Just himself. And that had to be enough. The gate creaked softly as he opened it. Nerissa stood on the porch, arms crossed. Not closed off, just careful. They're out back, she said simply. He nodded, not expecting a warmer welcome. He didn't deserve it yet. He followed the soft sound of giggles around the side of the house. There they were. Ari sat in the grass, trying to build something out of twigs and stones. Solène was braiding Nova's curls into uneven little rows, while Kyle sat, nearby, turning the pages of a weathered picture book with quiet focus. Darian stopped a few feet away. He didn't speak. They noticed him before he said a word. Solène was the first to stand. Mom said someone's visiting, she said, eyes narrowing. Yes, Darian said, voice low but clear. I'm Darian. I'm your... He stopped himself. I'm someone who hopes to know you. If you'll let me... They stared. Ari stood slowly. Are you a friend? Darian thought about it. Not yet. But I'd like to be. No one answered. He didn't push. Instead, he knelt down and looked at Ari's half-finished twig structure. Look strong, he said. What is it? A defense tower, Ari said quickly. For squirrels, in case of attack. Darian nodded, serious. Important work. You have reinforcements? Ari blinked. Kael's in charge of the blueprint. Kyle didn't look up but gave a small nod. I drew it with chalk. You can't step on it. I won't, Darian promised. Solène crossed her arms. Do you build towers too? Not like this, he said. But I used to build cities in my head. When I was little, cities. He smiled. With pencil and paper, just dreams. A pause. Nova broke the silence. Do you like swings? He looked at her. I'm not sure anymore, but maybe you can remind me. She reached out, grabbed his hand. It was small, warm, unafraid. Come on then. Nova dragged him to the swing tied to an old oak branch. The rope was worn, but sturdy. She pointed. You sit first, she declared. Darian obeyed, awkwardly fitting himself into the narrow wooden seat. You're too big, she said with a giggle, before giving him a weak push. But you're trying. He laughed, genuinely, for the first time in what felt like years. A few feet away, Kael was watching him from behind his picture book. his expression unreadable. Later, while Nova raced across the yard chasing a butterfly, Darian sat near Kyle. "What are you reading?" he asked, leaning over. Kyle closed the book slightly, holding the cover toward him. It was a space adventure. "I used to love stories like that," Darian offered, "especially ones where someone gets lost and has to find their way back." Kyle didn't speak, but he didn't move away either. That was enough for now. Solen approached him that afternoon while he was awkwardly trying to help Ari tie a bundle of sticks for a fort wall. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, arms folded, lips tight. "You don't know how to tie knots?" she asked finally. "Not like this," Darian admitted. "My mom taught me when we were camping." He looked up. "You go camping?" "Sometimes. But we always come home." Her words landed somewhere deep. "You're good at helping your siblings," he said. "I have to be." She didn't smile, but her tone softened. He nodded, accepting that he would have to earn every inch of trust with her. Later, as the day stretched and shadows shifted across the yard, he found himself sitting beside Ari again. They were quiet, side by side. Ari glanced at him. "Are you going to keep coming back?" "I hope so, even if we don't like you yet." Darian gave a soft laugh. Even then, Ari nodded like he respected the answer. Inside the kitchen, Nerissa stood at the sink, glancing out the window. She watched them, not with longing, not with skepticism, with study. She saw the way Darian leaned in, not to perform, but to be present. She noticed when he reached for the spilled juice before it could stain the porch rug. She saw how he didn't try to win them. He just tried to be near them. That mattered, even if she wouldn't say it yet. The house was still. It was evening now. The sky outside the windows was deepening into shades of purple and amber. The kids had quieted after dinner, scattered into corners with books and puzzles, full from Nerissa's homemade stew. Kyle stood alone by the back door, looking out toward the trees. Darian approached carefully. "You like quiet," he said. Kyle didn't turn. It's easier to think when no one's trying too hard. Darian paused. "Is that what I'm doing?" Kyle shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe." They stood there for a long moment, just air between them. Then Kyle asked, without warning, without build-up, "Why weren't you there?" Darian felt the question land like a stone in water. No noise, but the ripples went everywhere. He took a slow breath. "I wish I had a simple answer," he said softly. "But the truth is, I was looking at the wrong things. I thought success would fix everything." Kyle turned his head slightly, just enough to show he was listening. "I didn't know about you," Darian added, "but that doesn't mean I didn't fail you. I should have seen your mom. I should have been paying attention." Kyle's fingers played with the edge of his shirt. "My mom cried sometimes," he said. "When she didn't think we noticed." Darian's chest tightened. "I believe that," he replied. "And I'm sorry you had to see that." Another silence. Then Kyle asked, more quietly, "Are you gonna disappear again?" "No," Darian said without hesitation. "Not this time. Even if you don't want me around yet, I'll still be here." Kyle looked up at him fully then, eyes steady. "Okay," he said. "But if you mess up, you have to say so." Darian gave a faint smile. "Deal." Kyle nodded once, then walked past him, back into the living room. Darian stayed behind, letting the moment settle around him. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man with everything to prove. He just felt like a father at the very beginning of something that mattered more than any boardroom he'd ever walked into. If you believe it's never too late to make things right, hit that like button and tag someone who might need to hear this. Sometimes the smallest moments hold the greatest weight. 3 months later, the swing in the backyard squeaked under the weight of 4 children, and one clumsy adult who had no business trying to balance all of them, but did it anyway. "Dad's losing his balance." Nova squealed. "Correction," Kyle said from the side. "He never had any." Darian grinned, holding on tighter to the ropes as the kids piled onto his lap, laughing. It had become a weekly ritual. Backyard Saturdays, muddy shoes, garden snacks, and stories. That lasted until someone forgot they were supposed to be mad at someone else. Nerissa watched from the porch with her arms crossed lightly, but this time it wasn't from hesitation. It was protection. Love stands guard over what it almost lost. He had come every week. No missed visits. No promises he couldn't keep. No shortcuts. He helped Kyle with a science project. Taught Ari how to use a small hammer. let Selene braid his hair one Saturday because she insisted on making it better. And Nova, well, she had him wrapped around her finger from day one. But it wasn't just the kids. He showed up for Nerissa too. Not with flowers or apologies repeated like slogans, but with presents. When the water heater broke, he helped fix it. When she came down with a cold, he brought homemade soup and sat in the corner reading to the children while she rested. He didn't ask for anything. He just kept showing up. One evening, just before sunset, Ari tugged at Darian's sleeve. "Hey, is it okay if I call you something different?" Darian looked down. "Like what?" Ari shrugged. "I mean, you're kind of my dad, right?" The word cracked something open inside him, gentle and jarring all at once. "You can call me whatever feels right," he said, voice steady. Ari paused, thoughtful. "Okay. Then, Dad." Selene looked up from her drawing. "Me too," she said casually. "It's easier than saying visitor." Kyle didn't say anything. He just nodded once. Nova wrapped her arms around his neck. "You're our dad. You've been coming. You stay." He couldn't speak. He just pulled them all close. Behind him, Nerissa wiped her cheek quietly with her sleeve. Not because of what they said, but because they said it without needing her permission. They'd chosen him. The idea came from Selene. "We should paint a mural," she said, sitting on the floor with colored pencils scattered around her. "One with all of us." "On the fence?" Ari asked. "No," she replied. "Something that doesn't fade in the rain." Kyle looked up. "Cement wall behind the shed. South side gets the best light." Nerissa raised an eyebrow from across the room. "You've been planning this?" "Maybe," Selene grinned. Darian watched it unfold, quiet, letting it be theirs. 2 days later they began. Nerissa brought out the paints. Darian brought brushes, buckets, rags. The kids chose their spots. Kyle outlined the structure, a hill, a sky, a tree in the center. Selene added flowers and fireflies. Ari drew small creatures with shields, protecting the roots. Nova painted stars in daylight, claiming they didn't have to wait for night to shine. Nerissa painted last. She added 4 birds at the top of the tree, wings wide, flying outward. And beneath them, 2 silhouettes, not touching, not defined, but present, side by side. Darian stood beside her. He didn't paint. He didn't need to. He was there. As evening fell, the mural glowed in the final light of day. The children had long gone inside, their voices drifting through the windows, someone laughing, someone chasing someone else down the hall. Darian and Nerissa remained outside, sitting on the steps. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally he said, "You did that for me, didn't you? The 2 at the bottom." "I did it for them," she answered. "But yes." He looked down, then up at the mural. "I'll never be able to undo the years I missed." "No," she said softly, "but they're not asking you to. They're asking you to be here now." "I will be," he said. She believed him. Not because he said it, but because he had shown it. No rings were exchanged, no promises made. Just 2 people, sitting in the afterglow of a wall they built, quietly, together. Sometimes, love doesn't walk back through the door shouting apologies. Sometimes, it knocks gently, and waits to be invited in. Real healing isn't loud. It's found in bedtime stories, weekend pancakes, missed calls returned, not ignored. Time is the most precious currency we have. Not one of us can rewind it, but we can choose how we spend what's left. Darian didn't buy his way back into their lives. He earned it, in pieces, in pauses, in paint-smeared clothes and early mornings with sleepy kids who were once strangers. He wasn't perfect, but he was present, and that was everything. If this story moved you, make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Ross Story Trail. More life-changing stories are just around the bend. And remember, true wealth isn't found in stock portfolios or corner offices. It's found in the hearts we heal, the time we give, and the second chances we don't take for granted.